Welcome back to the Forensics Detailing channel. So in this video we are trying to bring an old, weathered, worn car back from the brink that's got, this one was quite dirty, so it's a bit of a challenge but good fun. We're going to go through all the problems that we faced with this car, and there's quite a few of them, what we were trying to achieve and how we went about doing it. Okay guys, welcome back to the channel, good to see you. So what are we doing in this video? We have a 55 plate Suzuki Alto or Ultra or something like that. I don't know, I think that's what it was. Belongs to my neighbour next door. And I've always seen it scooting up and down, and it was in a bad state, so I offered to try and sort it out or make it look a little better for him. So that's what we're doing in this video. Now the car in question was in pretty bad shape, pretty bad shape, almost as bad as it gets. It is red single stage paint that has faded sort of to pink and almost white, like a chalky look over the surface of it from years of oxidisation. As well as the heavily oxidised paint, the car was pretty dirty. It was one of those ones that's at the stage where it's got growth on it rather than just dirt. The biggest problem, well, there's a lot of algae and kind of that green mould on the surface of the car, and it wasn't soft, it was quite abrasive and brittle, but also little spots of like lichen that you normally, I think it's lichen, like this white kind of growth that you usually see on concrete, and it was very hard and it was very brittle, and it had embedded itself into the paint and was very difficult to remove. What else? There's corrosion on the car that can't be fixed through detailing, so the seals of the window have corroded, so we're just trying to stop the corrosion a little bit and just preserve that as best we can. They need to be replaced. Same with the rear wiper on the car, that was rotted through and needs to be replaced. Other than that, there was a damage to the alloy wheel, one of the alloy wheel cap covers that would need to be replaced as well. It would probably be worth replacing. The interior of the car was covered in kind of dog hair, which is always fun. So we had to get as much of that as we can out of vacuuming, and it was very dusty and dirty in the car. So that was the problem we were faced with, the proverbial we or me. But I thought it'd be good fun to just sort of see what you could do with this car. The challenge as well also in this video was to get all of this really done in a day. And most of the time, the best bang for the buck time-wise meant that the more time I could spend on the paint polishing, it was going to benefit the car. So let's crack on and go through what we did in this particular video and show you some of the footage. So first up, the interior of the car was all hoovered out. I even hoovered the engine bay because there was so much dirt and debris in there. Soaking it and pressure washing it was just going to throw a lot of that mud and moss and all of that sort of deeper into the engine bay and places like that. So I actually hoovered the engine bay out first, and I think I went straight into hitting it with pure kind of heavily concentrated degreaser, just to get the engine bay in a better state, and that came up looking half decent. After that we hoovered all of the interior out, just literally going around the car as fast as I could, mainly with a brush attachment on the hoover to kind of disturb and rake up as much of that dog hair as I could. The carpets in this Suzuki were very thin. They're like the kind of blankets that you get in prison, all fuzzy. And when you're hoovering the carpets, the actual proper carpets, not the floor mats, they all move around and stuff. They're so light. So it wasn't easy to get all of the dog hair out of there. But like I say, it was all about time. So probably only spent about less than an hour on the interior of the car and got, finger in the wind, 70 to 80% of the dog hair out of it. The boot was in a pretty bad state, and a lot of the lining of the back seat had just disintegrated and torn away. So, doing the proper thing would be to get a bit of fabric to replace that and maybe punch it in or something like that. But there was no time for any of that, so just gave the hoover a quick boot out, or the boot a quick hoover out. And as I was vacuuming all the carpets and stuff, I just blasted it in that turtle wax foaming spray that I was talking about to deodorize that. And it did a good job of deodorizing, actually. There was a sort of smell of dog hair in there and stuff like that. But got it smelling nice, wiped over everything in there, lots of APC degreaser and all that sort of stuff, and got the interior half decent. After that, we went on to the exterior. Now, the first thing I wanted to do was soak this car in a powerful pre-wash. So out comes Built Hamber auto wash, using it at virtually full strength, you know, 4% PIR is what they recommend. I might have even been over that. Put a big thick layer of that on the car and used more than 500 ml and just kept layering it on. It works very quickly, this product. You don't need to kind of leave it there soaking for like 10 minutes to its full effect. So you can give it, you know, give it a few minutes and then blast it off. It wasn't particularly hot, so I didn't have to worry about it drying. And that actually, as I'm blasting this particular pre-wash off, with single stage paint that is on this car, there's less risk of kind of little bits of clear coat that are kind of chipped from stone rocks and getting under that clear coat, lifting it and stuff like that. So I found myself using the pressure washer a lot closer than I normally would to literally try and blast some of the algae and that contamination off the car during the pre-wash process. And as well, at the same time, there was so much dirt build up in this car that I got all the brushes out. The toothbrush was the ideal brush for getting into all of those seals, which were covered in mud and algae and needed really scrubbing out. The main degreaser that I've used for all of this is Koch Chemie Green Star at 10:1, because it's powerful stuff, but it's friendly enough to use on exterior, like I've talked about. Really good degreaser product. So that was doing the bulk of all the horse work for me. Same with in the fuel cap cover area, that was filthy and covered with grime, but this stuff just sort of broke it down really easily with a hog's hair brush. So that was the pre-wash done. Then we go on to the kind of the contact bucket wash, if you like. Now with this particular car, there was no point in taking a safe wash approach. Okay, we're dealing with car paintwork we're going to be chopping into heavily, and paintwork with really thick contamination, that lichen that's stuck on there. So I wanted the absolute most aggressive contact wash method that I could think of, where I could really get into the paint, scrub the hell out of it. So we used Meguiar's, I should really put some of this stuff a bit closer. So we used the Meguiar's Wash Plus abrasive shampoo with a bulk standard 1 pound sponge, which I know is a detailing faux pas, but it would have been absolutely pointless to use a nice soft shaggy lamb's wool mitt and try and handle and finesse the paint. It's just absolutely pointless, because we're going to be chopping, like I say, well into that paintwork later on. So we went in aggressively using the sponge to get lots of abrasion going and work the abrasive qualities of the shampoo and try and scrub off all of the stuff that was on the surface. Even the Meguiar's Wash Plus with the shampoo would not shift those spots of lichen or whatever they are, mould, whatever, little white plant life that was growing embedded into the paint. Would shift the top of it off, but it was like anchored in. But it did a good job. It did a good job, and I was able to scrub out the glass at the same time, really clean all that, and get all those panels as clean as you could get for a contact wash. The next stage after the contact wash was to go in and do a decontamination. Now, again, with the most thorough method, in my opinion, and we're going to explore this a little bit more on the channel, if you're decontaminating, I think, is to use a very aggressive clay bar. I just feel that all the pressure is in one little point and it's really abrasive, and you really scrub it. I think it's the most aggressive method. But I wanted, if any extra minute that I spent doing other jobs meant less time machine polishing. So I used a clay cloth wherever it is, it's over there drying. And I used it with quite a lot of pressure, no lube or anything like that. Really, I'm just trying to save time wherever I can. So I flew over the car with the clay cloth using a very aggressive method, more pressure than you would normally use. And it required a lot of pressure to scrub out that lichen, but I could remove it with the clay cloth slowly but surely. So that worked well. We decontaminated with the clay. We didn't do any chemical decontamination because of how aggressive I was going in with the clay and because of the time factor. Once the car was decontaminated, also noticed a couple of spots of paint, and it looked like white kind of gloss paint, not automotive paint, that had fallen on the car. So I didn't want to mess around and start poking it with the least aggressive method first. I used a spot of cellulose thinner on a microfiber, and it just stripped that paint straight off and didn't do any damage. There was no red coming off, it was just affecting the solvent-based gloss paint on the surface, if you like, so that was effective. What else is there to say about the car? Well, I mentioned before that the trims on the window panel trims were rotten, as well as the rear wiper that can't be fixed. But we sanded those down later on because all the rubber paint's flecking off and all that sort of stuff. We sanded some of the surface rust off just to get it under control, and then just covered it in cure rust. I was half tempted to take those seals off, flatten them all back completely, etch primer them, or cure rust them, etch primer them, and then put stone chip paint on the front. It sounds nice and simple, but it would have meant taking door cards off and all that sort of stuff, and it would have ended up taking me about 4 hours, I think, just to prep those ready to paint them. I was even thinking about spraying some stone chip in situ on top of it, masking up and all of that sort of stuff. It would have just looked bodged, because it would have been bodged. Really, you need to replace those seals, but for the purpose of this video, we sanded them down and just treated them with rust cure to stop the rust spreading, I suppose, as a best thing. So where are we with this? We've done the decontamination, and now we are moving on to the now we're moving on to the polishing phase. As you can see, I've prepared very thoroughly for this video. So let's get talking about polishing single stage paintwork. Next, I want to move on to the kind of paintwork and getting the paintwork all sorted out and what we had to do. So first off, we are dealing with single stage paint, or gloss paint as it's sometimes called. So there's no layer of clear coat between you and the paint. You are literally hacking into the paint when you do this type of work. Sometimes working on single stage paint is really nice. Sometimes it is horrible. Sometimes it can be very sticky. You are removing a lot more product than you do when you cut clear coat, and that means you've got to kind of maintain your pads a little bit more carefully. It creates a hell of a lot of mess, especially when you're doing red, or any colour really, but red's always a nice one, isn't it? You know, the red goes everywhere into the pads, into all of the cloths that you're wiping the product off of. So I've used the cheap Paragone 70/30 soft cloths, because it's going to trash them with all that dye. It's not going to come out, so I don't want to use premium cloths on this particular car. We are also not chasing perfection with this particular car. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. We have been using rotary polishers, so the Mini Flex PE 8-4, which is a fantastic little compact rotary, and I finally invested in the Flex PE 14-2 150, their full size compact rotary, which is just a joy because of the weight difference between even the compact and the full-size Flex is minimal, and it's a lot easier to lift and control that tool, in my opinion. So that was the machines that we were using. The abrasives, we're using the new AutoGlim Rapid Renovator Plus, which is a heavy cutting compound. Now, you hear in detailing the least aggressive method first, you know, which can be, as a general default rule, is a good concept. But the level of oxidization on this car and the time frames involved, you know, I'm starting an aggressive product, basically, is where I'm going with this. This Rapid Renovator Plus is a very heavy cutting compound. You know, you could do major correction with this stuff, but it is also a high gloss finish, good enough finish for the particular car I'm using. If you do want to kind of gloss up the finish more after the Rapid Renovator Plus, you can use the AutoGlim standard Rapid Renovator afterwards and finesse the paint if you like. This particular product, what do I think of it? It is absolutely idiot proof, this stuff, guys. It's thick and it's not prone to sling in, even if you use a little bit more when you're measuring out your blobs. If you get one blob a little bit too big, It's not prone to slinging. It is definitely not prone to dusting. You can work the hell out of it. You get most of your cut out of it early on. You can feel it's a bit stiffer as you're kind of initially working it over the panel, and then you will start to see it thin and kind of break down, so it's easy to kind of measure. Once it does start to break down, you're losing the heavy cut and you're going into a sort of more refining cut that will bring up the gloss. So what AutoGlim advises, you can start off at lower speeds. You know, I should really read the instructions, shouldn't I? I think it's somewhere between 800 and 900 while it's at its heavy cut phase on the rotary. Oh, it's like a book, this. It's got layers here. So let's just see what they say about the speeds. 600 to 800 at the start, low speeds, then pass over the area in a horizontal motion, gradually increasing speeds up to 1500 to 1800, which is more rapid than what I was using it at. But you will, like I say, you'll see the product start to break down, thin out a bit, and that's when you can start increasing the speed to bring up the gloss. Very easy to use stuff, this, guys. Like I say, no sling and no dusting, which is important for me on the rotary, because if it's going to dust, it's going to dust on the rotary, isn't it? That is their Renovator, their Rapid Renovator Plus, and you've also got the Rapid Renovator that you could use to refine the heavy cutting compound, or you could use this on its own if you don't need all that extra cut. The Rapid Renovator, what I've learnt about it from just using it this short amount of time, is use less of the product, in my opinion, and don't overwork this too much. And they advise you to use it on their white pad, which is a coarser pad. If you use this on the soft black pad, which I was tempted to do because I used it just on one test spot after I'd used the Renovator, with the black pad, it can kind of slip off of the pad and leave the lines of products which are difficult to wipe off. So if you use the white pad, it just scrubs it a little bit harder, so you don't get that. So that was one thing that I noticed with the Rapid Renovator. The Renovator Plus is absolutely idiot proof, like I said, so that is a really solid heavy cutting compound, and I'd like to do the full forensic thing on it and get it on, you know, test panels and stuff like that at a later date, so we will do that. In terms of working on single stage paintwork, the biggest problem we had here was that we had a very noticeable layer of kind of the white oxide. Now, normally with a car that is that bad, it should have been like a lipstick orangey red colour that you could see on the inside of the doors where the sun hadn't got at it. Now, usually when your paint is that bad, to get that paint back, you are going to have to do probably, well, almost definitely multiple sets of polishing. So you're going to be looking to cut through with the first set, see the finish and see the true paint underneath, and you'll probably see, like I did, loads of defects and stuff. I could see where those spots of lichen had bedded into the paint. I could see scratches, I could see horrible stuff, and the problem is really you want to go again. And if I go again, you know, I'm gonna have to go again and then gloss it all up and end up, I could have quite easily spent at least 3 days trying to make the paintwork on this car look as good as it could, but it just wasn't an option really. So there are serious limitations with just doing one set on paintwork that is that bad, that you are not going to be able to get results like you could if you did loads and loads of sets. But I think that stands to reason anyway. What else about single stage paintwork? Well, when you've got that much level of oxidization, you really notice when you're doing a polishing set when you're not consistent. So say for example, you know, when we're starting out, we usually do our kind of crosshatch pattern on a panel, because it basically means that you work that little square with a reasonably consistent amount of polishing over the entire square, over the target area. When you're working on heavily oxidized paint that you're transforming to a nice color, the areas where you're not consistent, you see the difference. So it really kind of bedded home the importance of kind of being consistent when you're polishing. But it also told me that no matter what I did with this car, one set was never going to make the entire car look amazing, but like I say, the value of the car is less than the machines that I'm using to polish it, so that puts it a little bit into perspective. Anyway, we battled our way around this car. Some bits of it were easy to do. The hardest bit was really, I had to use spot pads quite a lot with this to really get into the kind of edges, because if I just used larger pads and tried to do this very, very rapidly, it would have shown on the edges where I wouldn't have been able to hit quite as well, and there would have been a big colour difference. It just wouldn't have worked, and that slowed me down quite a lot as well, unfortunately. If I'd have wanted to polish the whole car in 5 hours, it would have really, really compromised the results, but it would have still looked half decent, I suppose. Anyway, we battled our way around the car, got this thing fully polished, and after we polished it, I just wiped the polish down. I didn't use any degreaser because the polishing oils kind of also, they feed, I don't know if feed's the right word, but they do something. If you ever touch heavily oxidized paint with greasy fingers, I've got nice greasy hands, you just touch them with your fingers, leave them there for like 5 seconds, take them off, you'll see where your fingertips were, the white is gone and it goes back to red, and it's like the grease kind of on the surface or something is, I don't know what it's doing, but anyway, that will kind of disappear again, the oxidization comes back through. But I wanted to leave all the polishing oils in the paintwork, just wipe them down. So that obviously rules out applying a sealant or a ceramic. It was never going to be applying a ceramic to this car, I tell you. It would have just been a dog's dinner. So we threw a paste wax on, which is nice and easy product to apply, and also, you know, it will sit on top of all those polishing oils without any problems. And the net result was, once we'd done all of the polishing on the car and we wheeled it out of the garage, the car looked really, really good actually. What the biggest positives were that we transformed a car that was on the brink and at the point where it's unsellable, and it's for the scrapyard. It looked so bad, even though mechanically the car was okay, and it's not even a high mileage car, but it looked so bad. It's just awful. And now when you look at the car, it looks orangey red and nice and shiny. What do I feel, why am I mentioning this? Well, because it wasn't perfect, guys, going round it after chopping through that oxide layer. The amount of damage and scratches and defects that were under there was like, oh. And part of me wants to, part of me likes kind of working on that and getting the paintwork really nice, but I'm just doing this as a favour for my next door neighbour, so there was only a limited amount of time to put in it, as well as all those defects that were left in the paintwork. Some of them we could have got out. It wasn't, the colour clarity wasn't popping red like it should have been all the way around. There were areas where it was a bit more misty, and it needed going again. So that's just the nature of it. I'm not sure if I could have done it any better without trying to up the aggression, and I was working about as fast machine speeds as I'm comfortable doing. So really, that it is what it is. The car looks great compared to how it looked, but it is far from a show car, and it never will be really. There was one other problem where one section of the car above the passenger door had been repainted, and whoever repainted it decided they were going to use clear coat on that particular section and try and blend it in. So they couldn't have known what they were doing, because you wouldn't use a clear coat on a car that doesn't have it in the first place. So, but it was a really bad repair, and the clear coat has kind of failed in the centre section, and it's failed in little spots all around that. I can even see where they've tried to blend it in. I can even see scratch marks from a dual action polisher where they've tried to buff in the kind of areas on the end of it. In short, there's nothing really I can do with that. Polishing it's not really going to help, because there's so much of the clear coat that's failed in the centre section. The polish just kind of gets stuck in the little bits of clear coat that are missing. So you really with that, you've got to take the clear coat, either take all of the clear coat off, and then you're going to have a horrible matte finish, and that's just a can of worms, or get that particular bit repainted, which is really the only way to do it properly. So in this instance, I just kind of left it because there's just nothing detailing can do with that particular bit. In almost the same sense, the trim panels that we sanded down and we just got them flat and then just treated the rust, there was no fixing those. I could have spent, you know, half a day trying to get the bloody things off the car, you know, take the door cards off, pop them out, find out how they come out the car, sand them all down, and you know, rust cure them, etch primer them, and spray them with stone chip paint. And I thought about doing it, but it would just been stupid. It would have taken so long, and really, it's a no-brainer. You'd replace those bits of trims if you can still get the parts, which might be another thing. But it's not really economical or time efficient for me just messing around with the car to kind of try and fix things like that. So that was bodged. There's no two ways about it, but it was bodged. But hopefully it will stop the rust spreading a little bit, and it looks a little bit better than kind of seeing all that orange rust and peeled off paint. Less noticeable to the eye, so that kind of is what it is. Apart from that, guys, all in all, pretty pleased with the results on this one. The biggest disappointment for me is that every time I'm working on a section of the car, and then you're wiping down afterwards and seeing it so many times, it needed another pass, at least one more pass, if not two more passes. Now, you know, what do you say about this? Because the bottom line for me is I wasn't prepared to spend the extra time to do it properly, because of what it was. I suppose this must be a similar thing for people that are getting paid to do this, because I think even a professional would struggle to get that car looking amazing, just being able to sort of in one day. It'd be a struggle. There'd be serious limitations. So I think that's part of the deal with all this. The reality is, time is the biggest thing you need, well, especially me. But it's probably the first time that time was a major factor for me, and I just wasn't prepared to do multiple kind of sets on this car. But the end results of that are lots of defects still in the paintwork. You can't really see when it's outside. So when you've got the right light on it, you can still see all these little kind of scratch marks and the divots from the Lichen. I'm not even sure if I could correct those. They were pretty bad and pretty deep. But also getting the colour clarity the same all the way around the car, that was something that was impossible to do with that much oxidisation within one set. But that's the reality of all this. Rather than just not tell you about it, I think it's kind of interesting to kind of talk about all this stuff. But from a simple layman's point of view, the car looks so much better and looks really good. So in some ways I'm pleased, but as well as the exterior, the interior, I could have spent more time trying to get more dog hair out and getting a separate brush and scooping up more of that. I just didn't have time. So, but all in all, the interior looked pretty decent and smelt nice. So what have we done? We've gone full throttle on the car and done as much as I can do in one day, and I've enjoyed it, but it's been a hell of a lot of work. It's created a hell of a lot of mess, and I'm going to end this video now and start doing the tidy up, the clear up, get everything nice and clean back to how it all was. What is coming on the channel, guys? Well, as I may have mentioned in other videos, I've got boxes and boxes of pads, and I've been buying pads up to try and do a big, wide scale, if you like, kind of pad review and provide you with some foam pad recommendations, which can be a difficult video to do, but fun. And I'm doing it primarily as well because I'm interested in all this stuff, and it's a chance for me to explore it through the channel. We also have, following on from that, we'll have a best of style shootout video on automotive car shampoos and snow foams coming as soon as I can get them done. And in the meantime, there's lots of other videos that I'll sort of put out in between that are all out of sequence time-wise and sort of stuff like that. You can tell when I've shot them from the length of where the beard is. So that's it for this one, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe if you liked it. And as I've mentioned in other videos, we're on Forensics Detailing on Instagram as well, if you like to use Instagram. So that's it for this one. I will see you on the next video, guys. Bye for now.
Holding on to what I knew, but the moment's gone. Where was I?